Hello and welcome to Disc Dandies, a podcast where each episode two friends share a recommendation with one another. We talk about what we liked, what we would change, and try not to judge each other too much over our bad tastes. This episode, we talk about the real underrated superpower. Clothes healing? Healing clothes? We're repairing our sleeves with liquid.
It's summer. I'm feeling burnt out. After all this podcasting we've been doing, I think I need a vacation. I've been looking at places that I could go and take it easy for a little bit. All the nice places that people like to go. The Caribbean, Europe, Eastern Europe specifically. Maybe one of those very country kind of easygoing, not a lot of people, picturesque in the mountains. What do you think? That sound like a good idea?
I mean, as long as it's cold, because I can tell you right now, whenever people talk summer vacation, I'm thinking like beach, outdoors, hot, lake, and I don't want any of that. I don't like being sweaty or hot. Mm-hmm. And so, winter is usually the time of year where people just huddle up and stay indoors. But I'm the inverse. Whenever the temperature starts rising, I'm inside. I got the AC cranked up. I'm trying to keep it as winter as I possibly can. But if the place we're going to is nice and chill and loaded with tall, big booby vampire ladies, then I could be convinced.
Right, yeah. Nice scenery, nice picturesque mountains, nice like a ravine streams, maybe like a neat like windmill filled reservoir, very rustic village. You could really get in touch with the local people and then just take a load off, right? I think this is a great idea. You want to come with?
Yeah, it sounds great. We're making some Resident Evil Village jokes right now, but I do have to say, one thing that the village in Resident Evil Village has is like a plus in terms of being like a vacation locale is that there was not a spider in the game.
That's true. Yeah. My girlfriend and I played the remake for Resident Evil 1 recently, and the part that freaked her out the most were the giant spiders.
Yeah, it's definitely weird for a horror game not to lean into the spider or even really like bug trope in this game, because there were some in the beginning. But for the most part, this is a bug-free game.
Yeah, very, very happy for that. Well, folks, welcome to Disc Dandies, episode number 25, and you know what we're talking about. It's Resident Evil 8. We've been super excited about this. You've heard us talk about it over and over again. We are finally here, and I cannot wait to get into this because I've got a lot to say. No mice in this game either.
Oh yeah, not one of those. This was heavier on like the body parts horror, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. Like you get those old school like monster tropes, the vampires, the vampires, werewolves, like fish people, that type of stuff. Those old school stuff, but nothing that is like Resident Evil 7 was very like old like horror movies, all those different tropes. This was definitely going in a different direction. But yes, so we're both super excited to talk about this one. I think that you have a question to get us started off with, Jordan.
Yeah, are we going to be calling this Village or 8 in 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think it's very the way they did 7 was clever. The way they did 8, I think, was a little less clever. It was almost a little cringe, but I could definitely see what they were going for. No, I don't think anybody's going to be calling this Village. I think we all, humans want structure. They want to be able to easily group things together, categorize them, and the best way for us to do that is to sequence them numerically. So I think in history we're going to think of this as Resident Evil 8, and Village is going to be relegated to a subtitle, even though Capcom kind of didn't want to put 8 specifically in the title. I'm actually looking at my Steam right now, and yeah, it just lists Resident Evil Village, but no one's going to be thinking about that way in 10 years. How about you? As of right now, do you think of it as 8 or Village?
I'm thinking of it as Village because I think that's what Capcom wants us to start doing. I agree with you that like numbers are cleaner, and a lot of the times those like subtitles that you stick on games and movies are kind of silly. Like you'll have like Redemption, or lately a big one has been Ragnarok. Like putting these big scary words onto names to give them an identity of their own. But I think you have the Final Fantasy problem with games that have been running for a really long time, where you have like we're going on Final Fantasy 16 now, and it sounds a little silly at a certain point. And I think that the marketing hive mind has also determined that it is harder to sell games that are numbered the later into the franchise you go. Just look at like Resident Evil 6 and even 7. Like 7 sold really well, but it was considered underwhelming for a while because well, I won't say because, but some attributed it to the fact that it was a numbered game, whereas Village has been selling very well and is on track to break a lot of records for the franchise. But also, it's like I think that you see this a lot with like Assassin's Creed, for example. They stopped numbering their games at 4, and I think and that's also when they added like a subtitle onto the game, and they haven't had numbers in any of their titles since. And I think it's just kind of like these games are not as connected as like numbered entries in a franchise would typically be. So I think that's why we're seeing more of a shift to that naming convention. I think Resident Evil fits that bill as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, I wonder if there's been a trend in marketing recently that said that you do better if you take numbers out of your sequels. Yeah, because there's the Assassin's Creed that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The tabletop game Warhammer 40K just recently came out with a new edition, and there's been a lot of confusion there because they went from 8th edition to what they keep calling the new edition. And everyone, all of the content creation keeps calling it 9th edition, but the company that makes it, Games Workshop, is refusing to call it 9th edition. And there must be some sort of marketing know-how that's come into vogue recently that's caused them to do that. Your point about Final Fantasy makes so much sense. Any of them above 7, or no, any of them above 10, I cannot keep straight. I couldn't even tell you which one is which. But Final Fantasy also, I guess, has a policy to not ever subtitle their games unless it's like a re-release or something like that. So like that would really help if they kind of embraced the subtitle. But yeah, you're right. I'm going to keep thinking of this as RE8. But yeah, there's definitely a chance that people going forward won't, and we'll call it Village, just because they're kind of just adopting what Capcom keeps referring it as. So yeah, it's a great question. I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, I gotta admit to you, Will, I'm like champing at the bit to get into talking about this episode. Whenever I finished the game last weekend, I shotgunned through that game in the weekend over the course of the last weekend because I wanted to make sure that I was able to finish the game for this episode. And ever since, I have regretted it because it's just I've not been able to properly output my thoughts and emotions on this thing. So I'm ready to get started.
Oh yeah, you've been chomping at the bit. You're ready to bust ropes on this one.
Yeah, that sounds really sexual, but sure thing.
Okay, yeah, let's not wait anymore. But one more thing before we do that. Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Disc Dandies. It really does mean a lot to us for you to be here on this episode and any other episodes that you listen to. If you would like to help us out, it would really mean a lot if you would leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or iTunes. That really helps people find our podcast. And if you leave some words, like a little note with your 5-star review, we would love to read it on air. As of right now, we don't have any, so this podcast must suck. I guess that's the only conclusion I can come to, but that is there if you would like to help us. And all of our episodes are on YouTube. I'm really proud of the work that I've been putting into, in that if you are listening to this on YouTube, give the episode a like if you liked it. The bell icon's there if you would like that for notifications. Subscribe to the channel for more juicy Disc Dandies content. And more than anything, we love comments. Tell us what you loved, what you didn't. If you think we're a bunch of yahoos, if you agreed with us, disagreed with us, let us know in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet at us at Disc Dandies Pod. And if we can get some comments, I'd love to read those on air as well. All of that said, let's get right into this. Resident Evil 8. This came out almost exactly a month ago, right? Came out like May 8th, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, we're behind on the discourse mill.
Well, we needed a lot of time to kind of sink our teeth into this and get our thoughts in order. Produced by legendary, I guess some people would say this is a legendary studio, Capcom. You know who they are. And this is really a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7. It has the same protagonist, Ethan Winters, in that same new first-person perspective. Both of those are returning, and the hook for this one is that Ethan explores an old Eastern European village. I don't think they actually say if they don't say like a real country that it's in, but we can assume it's like Eastern European, maybe like a Romanian or something along those lines. He's exploring an old village filled with werewolves, vampires, and other creepy things, searching for his infant daughter, Rose. And so, Jordan, I know you said you shotgunned this just a little bit ago and you've been chomping at the bit. What was your impression overall of this game once you finished it?
So it's so complicated because I think it does some of my favorite things that the Resident Evil series has done, particularly in the early half of the game. But then it also is probably the best example of Resident Evil as a series is like flaws. A lot of my complaints with the series, and something that has always like kept it back from being like, you know, a goat for me, is a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about being issues in this episode. I could not have been higher on the game going into the Moreau portion. By the time I came out of the final boss, I was like, I was a very frustrated, I had a lot of criticisms and a lot of I wanted to take like a scalpel through this game and just cut a bunch out to make it more in line with what that first half was giving us. What about you, Will?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think this game did a lot of things good, and overall, I thought it was a good game. And when games start out really well, that's the thought, right? Is this going to stick the landing? And I do not think that Resident Evil 8 stuck the landing at all. I think it really stumbled over itself right at the end, and the game is worse for it. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is. You know, such a great setup at the beginning to kind of a bit of a letdown towards the end. But it was a really good game, and I really did enjoy it. And I have a lot of good things to say about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, just to kind of like summarize what my take is going to be this episode before it gets grading. It's that for every positive thing, and I've really thought this through too, but like for every positive thing I could say about it, I have it. There's like a but, you know, like and like it's. I wish it were me just being hypercritical and nitpicky, but there really were a lot of like, hey, this is amazing, but oh my god, they did not nail this portion later. You know, it seems that way with almost everything.
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. It's like it's a diamond in the rough, but they did not really try to polish the rough diamond whatsoever. But well, let's go ahead and do a deep dive on these characters. There are a lot of really cool characters in this game, and I mean, we all know, you know, Lady Dimitrescu that everyone was fawning over when this came out. There are a couple of other characters in the game that that weren't so much in the marketing materials that we got to know and that were really cool characters, and a few that were a bit of a duds. Why don't we get into this and talk about our boy, the OG dweeb, Ethan Winters?
Yeah, a lot of great characters in this game. Ethan is not one of them. I just want to dig into Ethan here just to get this out of the way, because I think he is, for me anyways, like a large part of why I wasn't happy with this game in the back half. What was your take on Ethan, Will?
I didn't hate it first. I thought that it was almost neat because I loved Resident Evil 7 so much. It was kind of cool to go back to a character that I ended up liking in 7 for the most part. I thought he was a little more mouthy in this one. He had some really nice moments at the beginning, especially with the what's her name, the house that burns down, and he has the interaction with the village family. I
Oh
really
yeah.
like. Yeah, I liked his character, when he was like, why does everyone die on me? But as he kind of goes through the rest of the game, he kind of starts making these like smart aleck quips, that I think were a little out of character for him. It was almost like they were trying to make Ethan a character, which is they didn't do a good job of that, and two, they were trying to make a character out of somebody that was supposed to be kind of a blank slate. And they went so far out of their way to make sure you never saw Ethan's face, which was really incongruent with how much personality they were trying to give Ethan. I think that was a huge miss, and did not really like his, mannerisms, his choices, and his demeanor at the end of the game once he started interacting with Miranda. I thought all of that kind of fell flat. What'd you think of Ethan?
What a horrible screw up of a character. Like both from a personality perspective, he fucks up at every possible turn. Whenever Chris in the back half is telling him, hey, slow your roll, let's do this together, you're gonna get shreked by, Mother Miranda, we need to face her together. Ethan, being Ethan, was like, nah, I got this, and then gets murked pretty hard. He's lucky that he's like a molder person or something like that. I don't know, I'm still trying to sort that twist out. To your point about him being a blank slate, it didn't make any sense by the end of the game that they were still so focused on hiding his face. There was no reason to have it hidden.
Yeah, it was real weird.
Yeah, it was an active like detriment to those cutscenes at the end with him and Chris on the bridge. Like there were just bad shots, like where you're like kind of above and behind Ethan's head as he's like struggling to like regain himself, and it. Like they made a lot of concessions in that scene, and to hide his face, and it was super distracting, and it pulled away from that scene. It was ridiculous. So it like not only was it like a predictable like playing out of events, it was also just like made worse by their own choices.
Yeah, he absolutely made some really dumb choices. Like, okay, so if I was in that situation, I would absolutely be like, okay, Chris, you're the professional. I'm with you. You clearly know a lot more about what's going on here. I'm going to follow your lead, especially since he knows Chris. Like, he's been working with Chris ever since the end of Resident Evil 7. Like, he knows him. Why would he be so antagonistic towards Chris during this? I know he's like in shock and like really upset and like just singularly focused on finding Rose, but surely Chris would be able to help him. And even Heisenberg, I don't my girlfriend and I kind of really questioned this. Why was Ethan so antagonistic to Heisenberg, who was actively trying to like help him and like work together to defeat Mother Miranda? That really got to me, how antagonistic he was towards him.
Yeah, and then the whole thing with like Heisenberg is like, even if you don't want to work with him, just lie to him. Like Heisenberg literally sits Ethan down in a chair in front of a pit over like, we'll get to that area in a bit. But whenever he sat him down in that chair, I was like, Ethan's gonna reject his help and he's gonna get kicked in that hole because Ethan's an idiot. Like,
Oh yeah,
obviously you lie until you're out of that chair. Like, like I don't know. Ethan was just a shit cake character, man. I don't know. There's also this like goofiness that was consistent with Resident Evil 7, which is the underreaction / overreaction that Ethan would have. He never seemed to be reacting appropriately to anything, and
yeah.
And then in this game, that's like turned up to 11. My mind was like just blown on multiple occasions where he would just like, one, not react to something like that really insane, or like he was responsible for that girl in the home fire in the beginning, whenever he dropped the girl into the fire or whatever, I guess wasn't able to pull her up. His handling of everything was just very frustrating. I don't know, like you want to like say that like they've made this like flaw character, but he seemed more just like an idiot, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that worked at the beginning when you like only knew as much as Ethan did. You were like, you both, you and Ethan were like, what is this? Just trying to navigate this really unfamiliar setting. I think that that worked with Ethan, but everything else, like once he started getting a grip on what was going on around him, and he started, you know, doing those quips and started making personally him making choices that affected the story. That's when it all fell apart. Were you surprised to, and we knew this from the marketing materials, but were you surprised to hear that Ethan was just like, yeah, Mia's my wife. I had a baby with her. We're living this happy, happy life in the Eastern European countryside. Did that like strike you as weird at all? Because I really found myself wondering, why is Ethan even still giving Mia the time of day?
Yeah, I think I like how I felt at the end of Resident Evil 7 was that Mia needed to be pushed into the river because they went out of their way to like state, hey, Mia was pretty involved in like the buy like she was guilty party to Evelyn in Resident Evil 7. And they went out of their way to like excuse her, like, oh yeah, no, she didn't really have a big part in this. And they even did that a little bit more in this game. They tried to recuse her a little bit further by saying, oh, she wasn't responsible for the creation of the bioweapon, so no big deal. But either way, she chopped off his arm. She just about killed him on multiple occasions. But even all that aside, before Resident Evil 7 even happened, she lied to him throughout the duration of their relationship. I mean, like, why would you? I don't know. I think Ethan just is like, what's Adventure Time puts it this way. He's not a fully baked person. He's he's missing some like character traits that are essential for human beings to survive, and it was very evident by his like, well, okay, I guess I'll go hang out with Mia again. God, Ethan sucks. He ultimate dweeb.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, one huge thing that he's missing is actual being alive, right? A lot of people assume this, and I think that Seven like wants you to like figure this out but never actually tells you, but it is actually revealed in 8 that Ethan dies pretty early in Resident Evil 7, and most of the time that you're playing Resident Evil 7 you are an actual more undead Ethan Winters that is being kept alive by this mold infection. So a lot of the weird things that happen in 7 and 8 where Ethan should have died or like lost limbs and those were able to just be put back on are due to this mold infection. And there's a pretty gruesome scene. This is actually one of the cooler parts of the game. There's a really gruesome scene where Lady Dimitrescu slices his hand off, and you see it all in first person. And after escaping from her, you are able to reattach it, and you don't see the actual like reattachment, but like you see him doing it, and that's a pretty clear indication that something is not right with Ethan Winters. Going into this game, did you think that something like that was the case with him, and how did you feel about learning that he was undead, so to speak?
Yeah, so that was like a question posed a lot or at least posed to me a lot in Resident Evil 7, which is like, is Ethan okay? Like at the end of the game, I was wondering like, they left, but Ethan's very, very clearly like a special case. He survived a lot of shit he shouldn't have, and like there were scenes in Resident Evil 7 where we're like, Ethan is definitely like persevering through some shit that just like I think in most games would have like meant that this character is like permanently hobbled. Maybe it even affects gameplay or something like that. In his case, it was just like it seemed like a convenience for the gameplay, but it in some respects I am glad that they did end up tying it back into the story because while it was comical, it was a little too ridiculous until they were like, oh yeah, no, he's basically just a zombie.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the things I thought was neat, and I did like allowing him to sustain really awful bodily harm, but he still be a whole person that exists. Like being able to show you just your arm being cut off out of nowhere, and then have it not actually affect like the character of the game going forward is actually really cool in terms of giving like actual scares to the audience. I do actually really like that implementation. I did like how kind of Evie was able to kind of be a part of the mold that's a part of him. So he was able to kind of have Evie be in his head and kind of tell him in clear terms what's actually happening to him, and for the audience as well. I did like that, but I mean, everything else about Ethan is just super cringe, and definitely think that his character kind of needed a bit of workshopping to actually be a good character for this game. Still a dweeb.
I hope their next main character, they learn from their mistakes with Ethan, because it definitely seems that they were torn in this game, especially between like he's a blank slate and has a character of his own. Because man, there were some decisions that would seem to support one of those approaches, and then in the like almost seemed like the same scene there would be one where it was like, oh no, he's his own person, you know.
So after the beginning of the game, Chris walks into the happy family having dinner, absolutely murks Mia out of the blue, and abducts Ethan and Rose, the baby. The vehicle transporting them crashes for unknown reasons. Ethan walks into a daze into the titular village, and this area I thought was really cool. I mean, they really nailed the rustic, Eastern European village, and the abandonment, the signs of like awful violent struggles, and then the little bit of the village folk that we do meet, I thought was actually one of the stronger points of this game. How did you feel about the village as like a designed as like a flavorful design that they created?
Yeah, I think the village, and I think this is one area that kind of goes without concession, Ethan aside, that I think that the village really did work, and I hope that the next Resident Evil entries use similar hub worlds to the village, because I think that it's really satisfying to go to a place that feels, in most cases, like a safe haven, even though there are new challenges here and there. To return to this area that you're exploring throughout the game and use new tools to open up new parts of it, that was very satisfying and fun and interesting to think about, because it was just like they would tease you with something early on in the game that you couldn't get to, but then later when you came back around and got it, it was like this like a check mark in your head type thing. But I also liked the introduction to the village, like the beginning of the game with the werewolves and stuff, like ransacking the place, and you're like running house to house to get away from them. I was really like bewildered, not really knowing what I should do in that situation, because the game didn't make it very obvious like how to escape the scenario, and I think that was intentional, because it made the situation feel really helpless, and like you were just kind of getting the crap kicked out of you. I thought it was really well done.
It does a great job of showing you that this is not Resident Evil 7 where you're trying to run and hide and conserve your ammo, that this is an action game, that you are supposed to be trying to kill as much as you can. You're supposed to be using your weapons to the best effect that you can. Like, you are supposed to fight. So I like that, but it also did a good job of balancing also, like, you're supposed to fight, but it's going to be a hard fight and you will take damage and you will be hurt. And so I love the flavor of the village. It was a good mix of, creepy abandonment. I liked all the blood that was around, signs of struggle. It was fun and really creepy to explore. And there's that one part where you have to come back to the village and you're like exploring like some abandoned barns, and you have to figure out a code to open up like a cabinet or safe. Yeah. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And then one of the werewolves, or lichens as they call them in the game, pops up and scares the shit out of you. Man, that was awful, but a really great moment. So I really enjoyed the flavor and the styling of the village. I think that was a strong suit for this game.
Okay, but we're gonna circle back around on the village here in a little bit, but I think we got to talk about the woman of the hour, the marketing material for this game, Lady Dimitrescu and her castle.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That is the next place you go after the village. And yeah, this is what everyone was excited for. Big, like Baroque Gothic castle that you explore. And honestly, this has big, like, for me, it had big Resident Evil 1 mansion vibes while you were going through it. I was definitely flashing back to like Resident Evil 1 remake and how it was like this creepy place that was all like very ornamented and all that stuff, but then things would just pop out of nowhere and scare the hell out of you. I really like the castle and the design of it, and Lady Dimitrescu. She ended up it was a bit disappointing how little she was in the game, but yeah, that was a little disappointing. But like her characterization and how she played out, I think was really like the highlight of the game, and she really lived up to her expectation, I would say.
Yeah, my strong opinion about this game is that I mean, I think that they probably realized it too, especially with like the marketing and how well received the demos were. That castle really should have been the centerpiece of the game. The village and the castle, I think. I think if you had cleaned out the other three areas that you go to, I guess four if you're counting the stronghold, and just focus on the castle and its interconnectedness with the village, I think you would have. I think this would have been an all-time great, in my opinion, because I thought Lady Dimitrescu was awesome. I like her daughters were scary. Like that was the hardest, like in the early part of the game, was navigating the castle and not knowing when one of them was going to show up, and you just feel kind of helpless against them too. They make it very clear that you can't really hurt them, which I liked, because it was like, oh yeah, you've got all this ammo, like more than you did at almost any one point in 7. But it doesn't matter, because these ladies are not. You're not really supposed to fight them, and I did like that approach. But just like the design of that castle, and then like weaving new Mr. X's in and out with the different sisters and Lady Dimitrescu, I thought was just, it really landed. And Lady Dimitrescu herself, I felt like lived up to the hype. Up until the boss fight, which we'll talk about here in a sec. But like, I thought that she was a very fun character, but I also really liked what they did around the castle, bringing some more life to her, like her giant bathtub, and just like all the little personal things where you can kind of put together what her day to day was like. And it was just some really smart character fleshing out things that you honestly didn't even really see in the rest of the areas. Like, it seemed like most of their attention, and I don't feel like it's like controversial to say maybe most of like their creative ideas went into that castle and them thinking about what this giant lady does on her day to day.
Yeah, I think you're right. In that sense, it makes sense why they would put the castle first and everything after that, because the castle is the ultimate hook. Right. You know, if they're going to make you do all this other stuff, it makes sense to put the castle first. That way, it's you're hooked. I loved exploring the castle and just kind of seeing the narcissism that Dimitrescu had, and hearing her like talk to her daughters, so to speak, and having her be like the Mr. X character, where she walks around and you have to avoid her. I thought that really amped up the tension and fear of the castle. So it wasn't just exploring this like a maze like area. Like it was really scary when she would pop up out of nowhere and start chasing you. And like I mentioned before, the scene where she just slices your hand off out of nowhere, you don't even realize that she's in that area with you. It's really great. And it's a real shame that she was in the game as little as she was. I enjoyed the gameplay of the boss fight, but I understand if people didn't like the boss fight, because she does kind of just become something completely different afterwards. So did you enjoy the boss fight, or did you find it lacking?
I found, and this is just like going to be a consistent theme here, like I didn't like any of the boss fights in this game.
Okay.
There was a opinion that I had heard, I think Tristan told it to me, like she had read it somewhere, that someone said it seemed like the boss fights in this game were designed for the third person perspective. And I felt that the entire game without really coming to that conclusion myself, because it was just everything's so awkward that the bosses rush up on you very quickly, like almost like across the board. And so when you're fighting them, it almost seems like you can't accurately judge where you need to position yourself in regards to their character model. That aside, the awkwardness of the fights themselves aside, these characters were already really vibrant and fun and like cool. They're already very threatening. Why did they need to turn them into giant like mutated monsters to make them like it didn't make them more threatening, you know? Like
Yeah.
I think I would have liked Lady Dimitrescu to, I mean, I just wanted her to be the boss, you know, like a showdown with, you know, maybe like, oh, you can't use your guns for this fight because we made it clear throughout the castle that your guns aren't effective against her and you have to use that knife to fight her or something, you know. I was really disappointed that it boiled down to no, she's going to turn into a big giant, you know, kind of characterless monster, and that's going to be the fight.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I did enjoy the fight, and I understand why they kind of want to do that huge, like big transformation and becomes you know, this huge thing that you have to fight. It does ramp up the tension and the action. It's unfortunate that they have to basically destroy a well liked character to do that, but I totally get it. I did really love that once you beat her, you pick up the like a crystal structure of her that you can sell to the Duke. I was actually really considering just hanging on to that and seeing if anything interesting happened towards the end of the game if I just had that. I don't think that's true. I think you are just supposed to sell all of that stuff as soon as you get it. It's only to make money and hear that line from the Duke. But I thought that was a really cool touch. I did like that, and overall I did like the boss fight, and it was really cool when you pick up the knife. She picks you up and you just immediately just like stab her in the side with that knife. I thought that was a cool moment.
Yeah, and I thought that that's where it was going to be going. Whenever you find the hint, like, oh, find the knife, it, you know, it's poisonous for them. I that's what I assumed was going to happen. But whenever it devolved into the, you know, the big monster fight, it was like it's a Resident Evil thing to do that. But it was also like, man, everybody stop killing your villains, you know. It's the Marvel problem again, where it's like no, the last act we need to kill the villain, we'll have a new villain in the sequel. And in this situation it's like I'm sure they regret that decision at this point, between her popularity and like the strength of her moments in that game. It seems like it's going to be a Far Cry situation where the next Resident Evil they're probably going to have another like sexy character that they're going to be pushing in the marketing, I feel like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, before we move on, did you like the actual boss fights against the daughters specifically? How you had to like use the cold air to like freeze them a little bit? Did you enjoy the act of like beating them and then killing them? Was that fun for you?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, fun isn't really the word. It's more like it worked. Mostly because the boss fights with the daughters were pretty short. Like once you figured out what you needed to do, it was just, you know, shooting them a couple of times after they froze and it was over. And it, like that didn't seem like overly tedious, and all of the windows that you had to break out to like freeze them were pretty easy to find. I liked the aha moment when you were like, you find the breakable wall against the second daughter and you blow the wall out and all the air comes in. Like I liked how that had you interact with the environment to defeat them, and that's kind of what I was wanting more from the boss fight, from these like great characters.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I love the mechanic of having to freeze them with air that you had to like figure out how to bring in against them. But once you figure that out, it's a little easy. It's a little just like
Right.
the tedium of having to do it. I kind of wish
It's
that
quick.
those fights were a little harder than they were. But I mean, they were good for what they were. And maybe if you play it on a like a higher difficulty, I never played above the normal difficulty. Maybe those are a little harder. But I did think that those were a little lacking afterwards. But overall, pretty enjoyable. And the castle, yeah, the castle is like, again, one of the highlights of this game. It is kind of downhill from here, but not completely. After we finish the castle, we go back to the village, because the village does act as a hub, like Jordan said earlier. And you get to see the actual ceremony area, and you get to see the Duke again and get to do stuff with him. But then you move on to House Beneviento. Oh God, can you pronounce this for me, please?
Yeah, Beneviento.
Beneviento, mamma mia. Is that offensive?
I think so,
I'm
but
sorry.
we'll roll with it. It's okay. They're Italians.
Oh, okay. So you go to House Beneviento, and it is like it really is like a haunted doll house. It's a really creepy walk up there, and you get visions of Mia and Rose, I believe. So we know that Ethan is like starting to like hallucinate, see things that aren't there, and you get up into this castle that's filled with all these dolls, and then you eventually get down to the basement where it turns into this like puzzle house that you have to like figure all of this
Yeah.
stuff out. There's like a doll of Mia on there that you have to like manipulate and find clues and figure out how to actually get out of this basement. It was very reminiscent of a Lucas's like puzzle room from Resident Evil 7. Did you enjoy this part of the game?
Loved it. That was my favorite puzzle section of the game by far, and I loved how they used every bit of that downstairs basement area. It was awesome having to like kind of memorize that smaller environment. You know, like you had hallways, you had little shortcuts from like one room to another, and you had this mannequin puzzle at the center of all of it. And you know, you're just like inspecting it and like kind of weaving back in and out with it. And they kind of raise the stakes up, as we'll talk about in like literal seconds, with a certain baby. And I just, that whole section was awesome and terrifying and unsettling. It was like they nailed that downstairs portion.
Scariest part of the game for me,
Yes,
absolutely. and
agreed.
i and I loved it thematically. It all tied into like Ethan and his like thoughts and fears about Mia and his baby. Like it was very, I could definitely see like a deeper thematic element that they were trying to get at with this, is just like, you know, fears about family and like, you know, being a father. We see that pop up a couple of times in the game. I love how they were able to get that theme in there. And then once you're about towards the end of this section, you get like one of the scariest reveals ever. A huge like what would you call it, like fetus monster with just a
Yeah.
gaping jaw that like cries like a baby, and there's a big bloody umbilical cord that you follow to get to this area. It pops out of complete darkness, and you have no weapons. This whole area takes all of your items away other than what you find inside the basement, and you actually have to hide from this fetus monster. I mean, I think that's pretty thematic, you know, in terms of like you know, like people's fears about like you know, family and fatherhood. I can definitely see where that ties in thematically, but you have to like hide from the monster to get around it, to go back to the puzzle and finish up what you were doing. So you can like hide in cabinets, or you can hide underneath the bed. Did you get underneath the bed when the fetus monster was coming that way?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, I love that. I can definitely see the irony is not the right word, you know, but like the theme there that they were going for. And yeah, absolute scariest part of the game. I did love it. It kind of lacks if you play it a second time. You know, like it's
And
one
you
of
know
those
what to
things.
do.
You know what to do, and you're expecting the scare and all that stuff, but like the first time you see it, it's absolutely insane. How did you feel about the actual, I guess the fetus monster isn't the actual boss of this area, it's more Angie, you know, the dolls, where, you know, Angie hides on you, and you have to search for the doll within the room of doll, or the building of dolls, and try to find Angie before the dolls come to life and attack you. Did you like that part of the game?
Yeah, the Gary's mod section of the game was not great. So the I guess the bar was raised so high by the castle and by that downstairs portion, that whenever I got upstairs, that's where I kind of felt my first like, this is where the game is kind of losing steam for me. It seemed like, hey, go find this character model around the house, and there's very little stakes. I don't. Can you even die during that bit? You know?
Yes. If it takes you too long to find Angie, the dolls come to life and start attacking you, and they can kill you.
Okay, I didn't feel that threat at all, because it was just kind of jogging around the house, found her, and it did not feel like the stakes were high enough. It wasn't scary. It felt like a kind of a tedious mini game that they were making you do, and it just like, there wasn't really much built up with Donna. really. The downstairs was the star down there, not Donna. She didn't really have much of a presence, you know.
No.
I get that it's supposed to be her power that's doing that, but that's not her. She doesn't have the character that Heisenberg, Moreau, or Dimitrescu had. She's just a lady that controls dolls. It was just a very anticlimactic ending to that area, and it was also where I started feeling those like pangs of disconnect from the rest of the game. It just felt very out of place, and it lost me a little bit there, I'll just say.
Sure, fair enough. I did like having to find Angie. I definitely felt the tension, especially on the third one, because you have to do it 3 times. You have to find Angie the doll and then stab her in the head with scissors, which is pretty brutal. And you find out at the end that you're not actually stabbing the doll; you're stabbing Donna herself, holding the doll. And yeah, I definitely felt the tension at the third part, like the third part, because it took me a while to find her. I did like the reveal that like it's not the doll, it's Donna. And I think it was some sort of flower, some sort of plant that's planted around there, or, that you inhaled or something like that, that actually gets you to, hallucinate almost all the things that you're seeing. So when you're interacting with Angie, you really are just interacting with Donna holding a doll. I really like that. And I agree with you. Donna really doesn't have much of a presence here. I think that's by design, but it is a little unfortunate because you feel like there's a whole nother story there waiting to be told.
Yeah.
And it's like they didn't do enough with that. It was a great section and all that stuff, but it's like, if they're going to have this character, they should have done a little bit more with it, have him be more of a presence. Even at the beginning, when we're first introduced to the quote 4 lords, you don't really even know that Donna's there. You see the doll, but doesn't really stick out compared to Lady Dimitrescu and Heisenberg. So yeah, I could definitely see wanting a little bit more, especially after that basement part. But overall, I did like this house, and I'm glad that they had, in a game that is so action focused, especially compared to RE7, I'm glad that they had a section that kind of went back to, you have no guns, you're not fighting anything. It is just pure like fear, horror, and I like that.
Yeah, it was a nice pace breaker. I agree with you. I do like that they were like, you're going into a gun-free zone, and especially downstairs with the baby and stuff. I loved the you're in an escape room now thing. Yeah. It's kind of similar to the section with the son from Resident Evil 7, where it was just like, we have a series of puzzles for you to figure out in a really tense environment. I love that combination.
Sure. Yeah. So after you finish House Benevento, we go into the reservoir portion with the Lord Moreau. Jordan, do you want to tell us a little bit about the reservoir?
Yeah, this is where, oh god, this is where I was not having a good time. This, just to put it bluntly, it pissed me off.
Okay.
I was very frustrated during this whole section. This was another spot where like the dollhouse, like the upper portion of the dollhouse, it just wasn't scary to me. Like the horror part kind of fell off, and the good parts of the action parts of the game weren't present either. Which for me, so with Moreau, you are more or less contending with a Gyarados. That's the tension of this level. You find him in his little like mold pit. You're blowing up his barriers and stuff like that to kind of navigate. You get I guess a thing we kind of haven't really touched on yet, but you're collecting your daughter's severed body parts, and you collect Rose's I guess arms or whatever at this point.
I don't remember.
Yeah. You collect that, and then the rest of the encounter plays out, which I kind of liked that like little subversion. You get it really early on. Yeah. But it was also, but the rest of that time is just like Moreau just, I don't know, man. I went from being a little bit like intrigued by like the tragedy of his character a little early on, to that just being the only thing that they were really going for. Like, I didn't feel like they expanded on it enough for like the sympathy to really come through, especially whenever I'm like being actively frustrated by the gameplay. There are specific portions I can point out, but I want to hear how you felt about this section.
I didn't hate this section. This is not where I think the game really took a dive in quality. When he becomes the huge fish and starts like trying to hurt you while you're trying to cross the flooded village to turn on the windmills, I actually really liked that. But it wasn't. It was a fun set piece, but it wasn't really it was almost disconnected from the game in a way,
Yeah.
you know, because there's not really all that much enemies. You're just navigating a kind of puzzle-like area and avoiding Moreau, which I don't think is all that hard. I've heard other people have a hard time with him when he's trying to like knock you off the platforms. I didn't really have much trouble with him at all, but that was a fun set piece. But you know, it again, like, would you want to play it a second time? You know, and you don't really get back to the kind of core action gameplay until the final battle with Moreau, when he turns into like some sort of awful frog creature with like a body in his mouth. And that boss fight was frustrating in a lot of
Yes.
ways. The acid rain that he would spit out and would get you definitely killed me a couple of times. And this is where I would agree with you, where you were talking about the boss fights being designed with a third person perspective in mind. I felt very hamstrung by how much I could actually do in this boss fight in first person mode. Like the sniper rifle, I felt was almost unusable in the Moreau fight, because you just needed the space. You needed like the air, like a field of view to be able to use that effectively. I just felt you couldn't in this fight. It was just really hard to get accurate shots off against Moreau. How did you feel about the boss fight? Did you have fun?
No. I did not. This was
Okay.
so just to kind of like backtrack a little bit to the actual level design of the prior area. I
Sure.
was one of those people. You are now the pro gamer. I was one of those people that had a lot of trouble navigating the treacherous like insta death trap that was the Moreau puzzle like platforming.
Oh, okay.
I died. Okay, so I died once to Lady Dimitrescu, and that was the only time I died throughout the game up to this point.
Okay.
I died like at least 10 plus times
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get through the Moreau portion. And where I really struggled was that, you know, there's that lift puzzle where you have like the three different colored buttons you can press
Yeah.
to lift the platforms up and down out of the water. Oh my god. I died to some like, oh, you started moving just a hair too late, so your character model, even though Ethan could just like kind of lift his foot up a little bit, it doesn't count. Like you've been blocked into the water and you get the instant death and have to watch the animation play out. You can still feel a little bit of my residual angst after playing through that.
I can hear it in your voice. Yeah, like I know what section you're talking about. I can't even tell you how I completed it. I don't even think I did it the way you were supposed to. I just, you know, I died a couple of times on it, and then one time I was just like, I'm just going to try this, and it worked. And I don't even think I was supposed to do it that way.
Yeah, I was furious, man. I was like, oh my god, this is bad. Because some of the deaths I had did not feel like it was my fault. It felt like I reasonably should have made it over, like made the distance, like the 2 inch distance that the thing had dropped since it started falling. You know, there was no like,
Oh yeah.
yeah. It was just like, it felt very limited by the game's design as opposed to like, and mistake being met with instant death and having to wait for the death animation and then the load and then having to do it over again from the start. Very frustrating section for me. And then that was bookended with, or like that came to a close with, to answer your question with the boss fight, with what you said, a very frustrating boss fight. One of the problems with Resident Evil 7 and 8, I will say, is that as cool as some of the guns can be, they can lack some oomph sometimes, depending on the enemy that you're fighting. Like, they feel powerful, but whenever they make contact with the enemies you're hitting, it can be hard to tell whether or not you actually hit them, unless you're
Yeah.
using like the shotgun and it just knocks them on their ass. But like with like the pistol and even sometimes a sniper rifle, I would shoot and be like, did it make contact? And
Yeah.
that kind of bridges over into some other issues, like with like impact and like spatial awareness and stuff like that. It's all like very present in the Moreau fight. Like I could never quite tell how far, like close or far away he was to me. and that did not feel by design. It felt like I didn't have enough like camera space to kind of keep an eye on him while I'm running around trying to pick up all this ammunition on the ground, because I went into the fight with like very little ammo.
Oh, yeah.
The whole fight was just very tedious after a very tedious section, and I was just like, it was at that point that I was like, I don't know that I'm going to play this game up to this point again. I might even like just cut it off after the castle. I was like, I don't think I can put myself through this again.
All right, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I do think that the Moreau boss fight is very exciting, but yeah, it's whether it's fun or not, I think is definitely up for debate. I think the only good thing, the best part about the reservoir is after you finish it, you get an area opens up where you can get the Magnum, which was very satisfying to like one shot the giant wolf creature that comes out once you pick up the Magnum. That was very fun.
Yeah, we'll be talking about favorite weapons a little bit later on. I got stuff to say about the Magnum.
Absolutely. So after the reservoir, the next section is the factory. After going back into the village, and this is Heisenberg's area. We've seen Heisenberg in the game before. He's I keep wanting to say that he's a combination of Nicolas Cage and Johnny Depp.
Yes.
Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. Oh, this is also kind of, you go into the factory after the stronghold, which I kind of consider the first part of Heisenberg's section.
Oh, I completely forgot about the stronghold. That's like the old castle portion.
Werewolf. It's like the Doom level with werewolves.
Yeah, I actually completely forgot about that, because it is kind of just, it's there and it's fun and all that stuff, but it's not really that, it doesn't stand out that much as its own section.
It's like two boss arenas stapled together.
Yeah. It's really more of like a palate cleanser than anything, but it is there. And yeah, the fight against the giant lichen with the huge hammer, that was pretty cool. I did enjoy that.
I liked fighting the normal werewolf enemies. I will say this because we haven't really talked about it too much. I think fighting the rando enemies in this game was a lot of fun. And I really like fighting the werewolves in that stronghold section. Not so much like the big werewolf boss fight that came after that, but I liked having to string together what ammo I had to finish off this horde of werewolves that I couldn't escape from. I liked that they locked me in there and they were like, all right, it's time to fight, and it was fun. Yeah. And I had the Magnum at that point, so it was even more fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. So after the stronghold, then you get into the factory, which is Heisenberg's area. And it starts off with you actually meeting Heisenberg and having this parlay, so to speak, where Heisenberg tells you that he is not actually in cahoots with Miranda, really, and is actually trying to
kill her.
Yeah, trying to be against her, and actually says, "Hey, Ethan, let's team up, help me, and let's take down Mother Miranda." And Ethan, in his infinite wisdom, says, "No, fuck you." And Heisenberg, in his infinite wisdom, is like, "Okay, I'm just going to kick your chair back, have you fall into this hole, and now you are in the absolute maze of Heisenberg's factory." This place was frustrating. Absolutely. Like, I'm not really, I have pretty good spatial awareness just in real life, and I'm not really someone that gets lost easily. And even in video games where things like twist and turn and you kind of get confused about where you're at, the factory is one of the places in a video game where I really did get confused about where I was, and got turned around quite a bit, especially at the end when you have to do a little bit of backtracking to go get some extra stuff. I absolutely got lost and was not able to find my way back to where I was supposed to be. Did you have trouble navigating the factory at all?
Oh my god, dude, yes. So this is like, the factory doesn't just fail on like the confusing level design front, because I'm sure that there was some amount of confusion that they're expecting the player to feel. But I think part of the flaw with this place is its flavor. It lacks all of it. It's just a big brown and gray like string of levels without much character to speak of. It's like, I feel like the complaints people had about the boat at the end of Resident Evil 7 here, I felt it here. And the enemies that they had you face are just the worst. Like, this is like the Resident Evil problem, which is like to make an enemy stronger, we are going to make them really hard to deal damage to, and we're just going to completely cover them in a bunch of crap, and so you're having to navigate this really frustrating and confusing zone while contending with enemies that are just they soak up all of your ammunition, and I didn't feel like they left enough ammunition to really deal with them with every single one, which is fine. But then they made this really frustrating decision to like have their character models like just they're so big in doorways and stuff. So like whenever you get into those like situations where it's like I don't have any ammo, I can't do anything to get this guy out of the way to get past him, And there were just a lot of I could see how it's supposed to create fear, but for me it just created a lot of frustration because it felt like, okay, you've taken away my guns because I'm constantly running out of ammo, but you're also taking away my ability to move. So what is left?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely. I had some frustrating moments in the factory, for sure, and it was it definitely a bit incongruent with the rest of the game, right?
And it was so long. And like as a tip to game developers, I'm not a game developer myself, so and they know more than I do. But one thing I can like tell them with confidence is that if your character stops and says, "Wait, there's more," that means someone told you somewhere along in QA that this area was a bit much, and you are trying to like kind of poke some fun at that. Your character just shouldn't be saying that. Like if an area gets to a point where your shit is that frustrating and like in feeling that long, you should maybe start doing some cutting. Because whenever Ethan said that dumb line to me, I had been saying it for a bit already. It was so long and samey, and you're backtracking a lot. I was very frustrated by the end of that section.
Yeah, and I didn't even find the ball. Each section has like a ball puzzle that you can get something that you can sell for more money. I never found the ball for the factory, and I feel like a rube because I was in there so much. I felt like I saw every single corner of that place. I was never able to find the ball. So I mean, maybe that's a good thing for some people, but it's a little frustrating to
you did the work. Yeah.
To know that if I want to actually do that puzzle, I have to go back into the factory and then do all of that again and do even more thorough exploring and get even more lost and confused to find the stuff that I missed. That I'm not excited to go back and do that,
Same. Yeah. The Moreau and Heisenberg sections were so not fun for me that I was just like, I don't think that this game is one I want to replay it for story reasons, and also it's really fun to explore and like contend with the dangers in the world, but I just don't want to deal with those dumbasses covered in metal in that place again. It was infuriating.
I love the design, and they were very scary at the beginning, but once you get used to them, they do just become super annoying.
Yes.
Did you like the actual propeller guy, like the not main boss, but like sub boss? That was that enemy, but had the propeller and would chase you, and you eventually had to take down.
He looked cool, but again, the boss fight was just like that. His rules were a little unclear to me because he could like run through certain portions of the room, but not other portions. I was very confused, and also like. I mean, I kind of killed him quick. I just laid a bunch of mines down in a line in front of him, and he just ran into them repeatedly and died.
Yeah. It's I think I had a little bit more trouble with it, but I think it had to do with what ammo I had available on me. It was a little tougher than that, but it was okay. But it was just kind of more of the same, of just fighting those enemies, like what their weaknesses. You just have to exploit that. So it was just more of the same for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get out of the factory. I've already been in it long enough.
I will say the best part of the factory in Heisenberg is when he calls Chris a boulder punching asshole.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess we need to talk about that. So you do find Chris for the second time, I think, at the bottom, and this is when Chris finally decides to tell you like a little bit about what's going on there. And he's also, by the way, I have this tank that you can control now. So go, so take this, go up to the surface, and start using this to fight Heisenberg, who's turned into this giant metal conglomerate monster, like spider creature. That was super, I mean, it was fun, but it was super incongruent, and I wonder if the game really needed that to make its point.
Yes, I mean it seemed like, kind of going back to the point I made earlier about like they didn't think that their characters were dangerous enough. When Heisenberg was throwing the knives into the wall with his levitation powers or metal powers, whatever you want to call it, it's like that guy could have probably had his own compelling boss fight. I don't understand why you felt the need to like blow him up. It's
Yeah.
it's like they were like, hey, we made these. It takes a lot of the character and flavor away from these bosses when you just like turn them into big blob monsters, and it's so much less fun when they do that to me too.
Right, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, let's move away from the factory. I think the next area is when you actually finally get to take over Chris Redfield and do
Yeah.
like a super like operator ops dive into the village with your team, and you get new souped up weapons, and you get to control Chris, who's very much like in control, knows exactly what he's doing. Did you like the part where you got to take over Chris?
Oh hell yeah! So this was effective for me because, like all this struggle that you had to do over the course of the game, and like going through the village and navigating it and just kind of barely like scraping it by, it was awesome and very self-aware to get control of Chris and just tear through that same area with the better weapons and stuff. And even whenever like Chris would get caught and like bitten or something like that, he had this super overpowered like separation thing where he would like one arm punch them across the ground,
Yeah.
It felt very much like, hey, we know who we're putting you in control of, and obviously this person shouldn't have much trouble with this area because of who he is, and he didn't. And I thought it was a lot of fun, and it was like a good break from the like like if you're gonna like, it has a lot of character, it's not just putting you in a tank or like something that someone had to like write into the story and like kind of felt like out of place. This was like, no, you get to control this badass character now who has been through this before, and it's meant to feel empowering.
It felt like going home.
Yeah,
It really did. It really did. It's like Chris. Oh, we love Chris, and to like control Chris and to be in charge and feel him just like be a badass was a lot of fun. Now his characterization in the game, I felt was. It was really frustrating how he was kind of just blowing Ethan off at the beginning. He was like,
Yeah.
you don't understand. Combined with the fact that his voice actor is the exact same voice actor for Carlos in the Resident Evil 3
I didn't know
remake.
that.
Once I heard that, I could never unhear it. But it lessened over time. I kind of thought that something big was going to happen to Chris in this game, and nothing did. I thought that maybe like Chris would die, or like Chris would like retire, or like something big would happen with Chris, but nothing happened. It was cool that he was there, but he didn't like. I wanted more of Chris's story, and I didn't feel like this was really Chris's story at all, and that was a little disappointing for me.
I'm actually going to say that I think I know where they're going with this, based on his relationship with Ethan towards the end of the game and his relationship, which we'll talk about in a little bit, with Rose. I think there was a lot of foresight when they were making Resident Evil 7, obviously with how they turned it into Resident Evil 8. A lot of the tiebacks from Village, or 8, whatever you want to call it, felt natural, even if they weren't originally planned. They did a really good job connecting the two games, I thought. And in a way that didn't feel like hamstrung. And my thought is that they're probably going to do the same thing with Chris between this game and the next game. They had to set up his relationship with Rose if Rose is going to be the protagonist in the next game, if that happens. Because then you have a big boss slash Solid Snake relationship kind of set up and ready to go in the next game.
Yeah, that's true, and that would be really cool if they explore that. I really hope that they do, because we love Chris, and we want to see his story continue. So yeah, you're right. There is more they could do with this. They definitely made this game feel like not part two of Resident Evil 7, but like it really is a sequel to 7 in the way that
Yes.
they tied things together, and that's good. Now we do have to keep in mind we probably will get DLC for this game. Resident Evil 7 had a couple of pieces of DLC where we actually got things that mattered. We got to play as Chris in one of the DLCs for 7, and we learned more about the BSAA that he's a part of. Blue Umbrella. We get to see the end of Lucas's story, so I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get more important story points in DLC to this game.
Yeah, and I'm excited for those too, because I think that thematically in how they set things up is really exciting. I'm once again very excited for the future of Resident Evil based off the end of this game. But a lot of it has to do with Rose and Chris. Like I think that's where I find, I was expecting something bigger to happen with Chris. I didn't think he would die. I think the some of the Resident Evil characters are just kind of like franchise staples, but like Leon and Chris, Ada, those things, I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. Well, unless, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But
I will say one more thing, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, but I will say I was very disappointed to find out that there were no like appearances from Chris adjacent characters. I was really wanting Claire to make an appearance. I was really wanting Jill to make an appearance, and the fact that they were not in this game whatsoever did really kind of. I really wanted them to appear, so my fingers are crossed for DLC. Don't know what's coming up, but maybe we'll get something. But sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I was gonna actually on that front. What I think that's like a comment I do have a little bit more to say about in regards to Resident Evil 8's like connection and 7 by extension to the rest of the Resident Evil universe. I think we're feeling a little bit too disconnected now. Like it's nice to have Chris and stuff like that in the game, but I would like for them to start like explaining why these stories had to happen in the Resident Evil narrative. Like when are they gonna? We still have like threads hanging from Resident Evil 5 and 6 even, that weren't tied up, and we're basically taking like at this point a 6-7 year break from that story that they were driving towards. And it's like I get that they probably want to kind of like give that narrative a reset, and they sort of do at the end of this game if it's going where I think it's going. But it's also like we do need to kind of come back up for air and like see what the rest of the state of the characters that we love are like. But I think we have one other major character to talk about. I kind of want to get to.
We put it off way too long. We got to talk about the ultimate Chad, Da Duke. Love this guy.
Is he a Chad? People seem to really dislike him.
Oh, I think he's a Chad, absolutely.
Okay. I will say I really like how he mysteriously travels around the world. It's a super cool moment. Whenever I walk into a room I am just like, how did you even get in here? And he's just like filling out the room. It's a great moment every time you find him, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do love the Duke as a character. I do think they did him a disservice. Because they never explain like what his deal is, like why he's able to do the things he's able to do, why he's there, why Dimitrescu actually allows him to be inside the castle while Ethan is doing his thing around, and he definitely seems to have some sort of not supernatural, but some sort of extra human thing that he's capable of doing towards the end when he kind of saves Ethan in a sense and deposits him just in time for the final battle. And Ethan even asks him, "Who are you?" And the Duke's like, whatever he says that kind of blows off the question. If the Duke is going to be so entwined with the story, I think they need to do a little bit more explaining of what he is and why he's able to do the things that he can do. The fact that they never do that, I think, is a detriment. But I can see why they did that. I just kind of wish if they were going to keep him just this mysterious figure, that he wasn't so tied in with what was going on in the story,
Yeah, I hope he makes a return in the next game too, and they don't even need to tie him into the story. I just kind of like his presence, and I like the shop element of the game a lot.
It's a really distinct new stylistic choice, right? And I really enjoyed his demeanor, his presence, his ability, his what's the term I'm here, market, buying and selling.
Yeah.
I felt that was a good addition to the game.
Yeah. I mean, we got to point out that he's like a big person, like he's very overweight, and they make a lot of like a large part of his personality is being a big guy, where he's like, oh, I could eat something scrumdiddlyumptious, like a bunch of things like that were not as cool. And I think that's why a lot of people weren't as big a fan of him. But I think I can largely agree with everything else you're saying.
Oh yeah, he definitely does the jolly fat man trope
Shtick, yeah,
quite a bit. I think one of my favorite things is where you talk. He has that jovial speaking, but sometimes he would say something very low and ominous. He would say things like, "This is all an investment, Ethan," and just lose that jolliness, and that was always really, really creepy.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what they're going for. They're trying to emulate that kind of mysterious merchant from RE4, and I think they did a good job. But I think the RE4 merchant worked because he was completely detached from the story in a way that the Duke really wasn't. But no, I'm putting my cards down. The Duke, absolute Chad.
And hope he returns in the next game, or at least something similar to him, because I really enjoyed that mechanic. All right, Mother Miranda.
Totally unimpressed. Not a great boss fight. Wasn't really all that enamored by the actual boss fight. The Mother Miranda part, I think, is for me where the game really went downhill. I like found myself not caring about the story anymore. Just really let down by her and everything that happens. Pretty much everything from where Chris finds the real Mia to the end was super let down by.
Yeah, and like her ties to the rest of the larger Resident Evil universe, like, oh, she knew this guy, but it was just like very half-baked and underthought. I felt like they just kind of dropped it into the environment and gave it a voice line. It seemed like an afterthought. Mother Miranda, for all the hype she got, I would have like sworn to you that she was going to be a larger character, like someone that like was really important to the series, like maybe Jill or Claire. And just no, it was very disappointing. Like it was. And her boss fight was video game stuff, which is totally fine. But in this game, it just didn't. I did not feel like it worked. It felt like all of the other boss fights, for as like frustrating as they were to me, and like as much as they were like big monster, type things. At least they felt like a part of the world. She did not. She felt very like artificial and very like. Too much like the scenes were showing too much on the video game.
I think so, yeah. Her boss fight is just dodge her and empty all your bullets into her.
Yes.
Didn't really feel there was any sort of like hook or like interesting thing that was going on. At least Heisenberg got like a cool tank fight. Mother Miranda is literally just, okay, this is very clearly when you pull out your Magnum and you shoot all your Magnum bullets into her, and then you go to your next most powerful gun and you empty all those bullets into her, and then you move on to your next most powerful gun. It was left a lot to be desired. I really found myself not really caring about Mother Miranda, especially once I was realized that I was going to just be killing her. And everything Mother Miranda and afterwards just really let down by. It's such a misstep. It's for such a great setup to all of this. To have it in this way was just not good.
Yeah, it definitely made you kind of like. That's where I had like really settled on the idea that this game should have been the castle, it should have been Lady Dimitrescu, it should have been her daughters. You can include some of the other characters that they had as like other bosses, but I think that they had some cool ideas and they put all of their chips into the wrong spot, because it's not like Mother Miranda had anything that Lady Dimitrescu didn't. I mean, she definitely did not. Like, she did not have the intrigue that she had was just due to us not knowing who she was or what kind of presence she had in the village. And once all of that was revealed, it's all dispelled. There's nothing interesting about her.
That's perfect. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, once you learn who she is, you don't care anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. I did like the reveals that like she knew like the old Spencer, that the Umbrella Corporation, what like they took their logo from the symbols that they found there at that village area, that the mold
Yeah.
originates from that area. I thought all of that was cool, but just with the way the game ended, it didn't give you a reason to care. Because you learn all that and you think, oh, that's cool, but then you're like, oh, Mia's back. Oh, Mia's like, where's Ethan? And then Mother Miranda, the uninspired boss fight, and then Ethan's like, oh, save Rose, I gotta die here, and you're just like, okay, I don't care about this anymore. None of this matters. It's all made up. Really disappointing.
Why did Ethan need to blow himself up?
That's what I thought. I was like, my girlfriend, when we were talking about this, because we did play it together, she was like, well, he was going to die anyway. We knew that he was like calcifying due to whatever was making the big monster at the end, the megamycete, or however you say it. Whenever it was making that calcify, was also making Ethan calcify. So he was like dead no matter what. So he was like, oh, I'm gonna take Rose, save her. And when that was playing out, I was like, Ethan, why don't you just go with them? Like Chris, the professional, the one who is capable of like doing, the superhuman stuff, is saying, come with me. For Ethan to just be like, no, I know better than you, Chris. I'm going to sacrifice myself. You save my daughter, even though you're trying to, and probably capable of saving both of us, just to make have a big like self-sacrifice climax moment, was just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I just kept thinking, no, Ethan, like, leave, let the professional handle it. Just leave, try to be there for your daughter, don't give up. It's like, don't die for your family, live for your family.
Yeah, and it didn't make any sense that he was like, well, I got to be the one to blow the thing up. And Chris even says in the helicopter, like, he died so we could escape. He totally didn't need to. There was no like range like restriction that was announced to us. It didn't say, oh, Chris has to be within X distance to like blow the place up. And also, it was like, I thought this whenever like Ethan's hand like just like turned to dust. I was like, what happens if you walk, like, you're taking all this time to walk back into the village and have your cool like shot where you blow yourself up? What happens if your other hand crumbles before you get a chance to do that?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It was unbelievable. It was like, just leave the remote detonator with Chris. And if you really want to hang out here and get blown up, go ahead. But like, you've risked everyone else by deciding to do this yourself, you dumbass.
Yeah, the story really fell apart at the end. But how about we wrap this up? Let's talk about the story. We talked about a lot what we dislike, but as far as the story, what do you think this game, the story, did the best? What were your favorite moments, and what do you think was the shining like part of this game, story wise?
The Ethan twist, for such a not great character, an actively not great character, I thought landed and was very effective. Despite me disliking him the entire game and like being aggressively anti-Ethan by the end, they managed to make me feel sympathy for him whenever they were like, oh yeah, man, you got murked in the first game. Like Pop, what's his face? Papa Scary Man in the first game, Jack Baker. He killed you like right at the beginning of the game, and that's just that was a cool twist and a nice way to tie things back to the first game. I did like a lot of the larger ties to the Resident Evil universe. It made me think about things like, oh, Umbrella has been around for a bit. They may not have always been called Umbrella, but because their logo has been around for a long time. There were a lot of cool larger things to think about. And I'll say I liked the after credit sequence, which I still want to hold off on talking about for just a little bit longer. But like, sure, the after credit sequence with Rose and the implications of that, I also really liked, because I think it kind of signals what the future of the franchise is maybe heading towards, and I'd like to speculate on that a little bit. I think those were the highlights for me story wise. I think I have really nothing but negatives for the rest of the story. It seems like they were really excited to develop the first portion of the game with Castle Dimitrescu, and the rest of the game felt so much less inspired, and there was a lot less character, and this story, it felt like the story was not serving the environments anymore at that point. And I felt like that was evident by the fact that you're just being shuttled from location to location. You're collecting the Infinity Stones, and like, Whereas the first part of the game felt like I'm just trying to figure out what the hell's going on and I'm looking for my daughter. It was a lot more like streamlined and like concise, and you were more focused on the characters you're encountering and the environments you're in rather than whatever the hell they were trying to like push forward with the last couple areas.
Yeah, I agree. The story is the best at the very beginning when you don't know what's going on. You're getting those like clues as to what's happening. So the first time that you're in the village, you meet the village family, and there's that really gripping scene where her father turns into a lichen and starts killing everybody, and then she falls in the fire and you can't save her. That was like the one like Ethan like emotion characterization part that I really liked. And once you're in the castle and you're trying to like put things together, and the tension of trying to escape the castle and trying to find Rose there, those were the best parts of the story for me. Like you said, the entire story can pretty much be summed up in a paragraph. It's the story asking the questions that's the compelling part. But once the story actually answers those questions, it doesn't do that great. So yeah, as far as like what I dislike about the story, it really is like almost everything, starting with like after the castle, but like it really nosedives after Chris finds Miranda. This story really lets down at the end, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's just a lesson of like it not following its own rules either, because a lot of what happened in the back, like that last eighth with Mother Miranda and everything, didn't make any sense. She's conducting a ritual, but we're not really giving like a really clear understanding of like how the ritual works or why it has to be a ritual. Like we don't understand like how the mold works really. They kind of do a weird job explaining how Ethan is still alive, like he's infected by the mold, but there was also an implication that he is literally just like made of mold, since the mold can retain memory and like kind of becomes its own thing, like there's a lot of it gets really fuzzy there, like really messy and sticky, and like it doesn't make any sense, and it's hard to connect with something that's not making sense, especially whenever you're making like weird direction decisions, like keeping it like Ethan's face still hidden. We know what he looks like now. The what do you call it, the modders found his face in like the game files for Resident Evil 7 or something like that, and there's nothing special about that face worth hiding.
No, we've known the face for years now. Yeah, so yeah, really, really disappointing. I am holding hope that maybe we'll get some DLC that'll tie some things together and maybe make me like the story a bit more than I do. But with that out of the way, do you want to talk about the actual gameplay of this game?
Yeah, the like most of it's the best part of the game in my opinion.
Sure, yeah. We've mentioned this quite a few times already, but this is much more action-oriented than the previous game. 7 really wants to go back to that very old feel where it's very, very limited on what weapons you have or how much ammo you have. You're supposed to be hiding and like conserving your ammo. This game is taking a page out of Resident Evil 4, like very clearly. It's very much a spiritual successor to the 4th installment of this franchise, and it does want you to use your guns. It wants you to fight. It wants you to be able to kill, because it rewards you for doing so by giving you money and then like these crystal items that you can sell to the Duke, and then from the Duke you can buy more weapons, ammo, plans for crafting and all that stuff. I would say if they wanted to make the game more action oriented, I think they did it probably in the best way possible. It was a good mix of those horror elements, like especially at the very beginning when you don't have a gun, and then like exploring the castle, and then adding in those like intense action sequences, like you were saying, the stronghold, where you're just put in a room with lichens and it's like, okay, go crazy, use all your guns. I thought was a great mix of those horror elements from 7, and then that new action oriented focus they wanted to move into. So Jordan, do you think it was a good move for this game to become more action oriented compared to RE7?
Yeah, I think it's like a double-edged sword in this game, because I think that for me, where this game was like clicking and the combat was the best is when you were fighting the mobs. When you're fighting, like whenever you're surviving against like a couple of werewolves, or the zombie dudes with the swords in like the dungeon of Castle Dimitrescu, which was awesome. Like it was such an atmospheric area, and like having them kind of come out of the dark, I loved it. And that they like the moment to moment action against like, oh, there's overwhelming numbers against my limited ammo. I felt like where the game was going off, especially like you said, whenever you get to the stronghold and you're like, I really gotta hit my shots. I need to be moving. Like Ethan's not, Master Chief or anything. He's got to not get hit because it hurts a lot, Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. But it was whenever they started introducing the armored enemies that, like, I feel like that's where you like, the double-edged sword part comes in. It's like there are different ways to make your enemies more difficult, and I don't think suiting them up more against your still consistently limited ammo is the right way to do that, because then you're punishing people with like, maybe like that just aren't as skilled. And you can say, oh well, you just like adjust your difficulty, but it's like I don't know how much easier this game gets with the ammo versus like armored problem, because you still have to hit those shots to knock the helmet off the head. You still got to like shoot the sensitive spot on the cyborg dudes in Heisenberg's place repeatedly. There's still like some amount of skill needed for those sections, and while I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, I think that there are more clever ways that you can challenge the player without making it just like a battle of attrition. And and in this case, I thought it worked the best when you had to pick the enemies you were going to take out, as opposed to you got to use all your ammo to take down this one guy. I thought those were the more compelling moments when it's like, I have 8 shotgun shells. There's like 13 werewolves. I very clearly can't hang out here. I'm going to basically clear my path and get through here, and instead of trying to take them all out. I thought that's where the game was shining combat wise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I hope that this game takes everything it learned about taking the new direction of Resident Evil and adding that more action-oriented perspective. And I hope that they use that to make the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake, which, I mean, it's very clear these are being developed at the same time. They are both influencing each other. So I think that if the combat in 4, the 4 remake, moves in this direction, I think that's a good thing. And I hope that they learn some stuff and it makes the 4 remake as good as it could possibly be. And based on what they did here, gameplay wise for 7, I'm really looking forward to the 4 remake, and I'll probably play it when it comes out. I'm glad that I kind of know what to expect based on how the action is in this game. I want to ask you, do you think that 8 Village moved too far away from the horror focus of Resident Evil 7? Do you think that it went too far in the direction of action?
I don't, because I think that for the most part, I think that the game never really, like, in the good parts of the game, let me say, the parts where you're dealing with Lady D and Donna and her funhouse. Like, I think that game was sufficiently scary, and I think that I could see how the Heisenberg portion was supposed to be scary, and it was for a time before it started getting really frustrating. I think they were trying there, but I think for this game having the scariest moment out of any Resident Evil game I've played, though, with the baby and Donna's basement, like, I think that was. I don't think that they've moved as far away as people are saying. I think they just added more action is the difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm happy with the mix, and I hope that they realize that this is probably the best mix for them to have. That if they want to retain action oriented gameplay, that like having sections like the baby house and other things like that, like the very beginning when you're exploring like a dark area with no guns. I thought that was pretty scary too. And the lichen bites the fingers off of Ethan, like right at the very beginning. I think that I at least hope that they know that like you need stuff like that in your games moving forward, because that's what people want. Like people clearly want that out of their Resident Evil games. So I think they did a very good job of mixing the two. Did you like the crafting of the game at all? There was a crafting system where you could find materials, and then you could create different ammo for your guns, as well as like first aid, medicine, and some other stuff. Did you like the crafting?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I liked the development of the gun parts more. Like I liked it whenever the crafting was giving you like upgrades to your gun. Like you would bring stuff back to the Duke, and you could make gun parts out of it. Am I thinking about the right thing?
Yeah, you're thinking the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fine. I think it worked to make the numbers work for like game progression. I'm not married to it. This game could absolutely just give you the items outright and kind of get rid of the crafting system. The crafting system, I think, adds something to the balance of the game, but the game does not need it to be a good game.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely felt like it was a fine decision that they made, but it didn't need to happen. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And then the food crafting system for the Duke to give those permanent upgrades was a little silly. And I think they meant it to be a little kind of, isn't this funny? The Duke is making you food, and it's going to make you more powerful. I didn't hate it from a gameplay perspective, but it was a little like, hey, Duke, make me risotto so I can fight these lichens. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was fine. Again, another like, that's okay. That is fine. You decided to do that. I also only bought like one or two of those upgrades because I just didn't bother looking around for the animals. So I was just like, that's okay that it's there, but I think the game's perfectly playable without it.
I don't think the game does a good enough job of telling you that you're supposed to actually kill the animals to make food. I think the game could have gone a little bit more out of its way to be like, hey, see these animals, kill them so you can, use the meat at the Duke. I wish they could have, made that clear a bit more. It's okay. It's okay that's there.
Yeah. I felt a little stupid in the back half of the game because I didn't actually figure out about the food thing until I feel like almost Heisenberg. I think it was like right after Moreau was done that I was like, oh, this is okay, shoot. And but then at that point I was like, man, I feel like I'm close to the end of the game. I don't feel like running all over the village and killing all of the animals over again. I'm doing fine, so I'll just progress.
Yeah. I know that you've mentioned a couple of times that you had some thoughts about the kind of the map and area design. I know earlier you were mentioning the village as like a hub area. How did you feel about kind of like the mechanical design of both the village as a hub world and then how everything connected?
I think for the sake of immersion, I like the village feeling like one interconnected place, and it consistently felt that way up until Donna's house. I felt like because as much as I like downstairs in Donna's house, Heisenberg's factory, even the stronghold and Moreau's, the reservoir, all of that felt disconnected from the village and the castle. Like they didn't feel like they were all linked to the same place anymore. And I think that just kind of like for me, it just kind of reaffirms my belief that this game should have been the castle in the village, and maybe making the castle a little bit bigger and having it intertwine more with the village. Like you're coming in and out of the castle, in and out of the village at different like locations and stuff. Because like I felt it was at its strongest point whenever you were in one of those two places, and the other areas in the game, even for their positives, were more set pieces than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that this game, like the things that we're going to carry forward in the next Resident Evil games, especially what I think the developers are getting as a message, is that the Lady D section was just so well received, as well as the village. I think that they should move forward with the like interconnectedness, because I think it does a lot for your games. I mean, we see it with like Dark Souls, where it's like having your world be one giant interconnected thing makes it feel more lived in. It makes it feel more like you're more in the game and not thinking about the seams as much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Donna's the house and Moreau's reservoir were they did a good job of making it seem like it was a part of the village and a part of the greater whole. But it ended up not actually being that way. They were very much sequestered off by themselves, even though they had the appearance of being connected to everything else. I agree with you. It'd been sweet if they could have been a bit more interconnected. But overall, I think I'm happy with how mechanically everything was connected. They had to do some weird story stuff to make it all work out, but I did enjoy going back to the village multiple times and having
Yes.
more areas of the village that you could unlock after doing a section. I did like that.
Yeah, it feels like, and like I don't know about the history behind the development, but it feels like the village and the castle were probably the first things designed for the game, and they designed the stronghold, the factory, and Donna's house, and the reservoir like all later on, because because there's so much like aesthetic in the castle, like so many like, oh, this is Lady Dimitrescu's bathroom, this is her like her little opera room, like there's just like all these little character spaces. And then in the village there's like little stories in all of the houses, but whenever you like, especially in the reservoir in Donna's house, there's not much of that. Like Donna's house is a puzzle for the most part.
Yeah.
And like there's this weird like, it's just like one big boss battle in the reservoir, and then the factory just isn't really a location. It's more of like your traditional, like you're going through an industrial a horror industrial zone, you know. Like they all felt like they lacked the flavor and like thoughtfulness that the village and the castle had. And I really felt like through the end of the castle, even after the Lady D fight, I was like, man, this game has some like masterpiece level area design between the village and the castle. And it just like really fell off after that, because it felt like you were like leaving town to go to the other three locations.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. They definitely could have done some workshopping. I mean, just like with the story, they could have workshopped it a little bit more to make it more congruent with each part, make more sense as a whole. And they definitely could have done that same thing to the areas, which is a shame, because flavor wise for each of those areas, they did such a great job making them like even the factory, which kind of sticks out a little bit as being like, why is this here? It's still a really creepy, like well flavored, like I'm getting lost in a maze like factory. It's too bad that they couldn't have like made it more congruent with the rest of everything, and that goes for like everything in the map design.
Yeah. All right, you want to talk some quick hits? You want to wrap up the discussion?
Yeah, let's get these quick hits. Yeah, because I think there's one more part of this game that we have not talked about that we should probably knock out real quick. And if you're okay with me going ahead and bringing this up, the very end of the game, the epilogue, we see Rose grown up as a I guess teenager, maybe like late teens, early 20s. I don't actually know. Probably teens. But we see Rose grown up and visiting Ethan's grave. And I doubt that he's actually buried there, you know. But there's this weird section where she's like being like looked over by like almost Secret Service like security. And, you know, she has like a kind of antagonistic relationship with the agent. And then they end up getting in the car together and driving away. And then there's like a very mysterious figure that none of us know who it is, that hasn't been revealed, who's like watching her the entire time, which is really strange and asks a lot of questions in the story that already has a lot of questions. So what do you feel about Rose likely being the next protagonist for the next Resident Evil game?
I'm into it. She has a face. I also, this is the first thing that comes to mind is whenever she confronts that security guard that's watching over her, she goes, I can do things that even Chris doesn't know about. The next Resident Evil is going to be a BioShock.
Okay, that's very interesting.
That's my prediction.
I'm not completely opposed to that. That would be pretty cool if they kind of did something like that.
Yeah, I think that the next game, they purposely didn't talk about Rose's powers. But if it's still going to be a horror game, I think they're going to lean in on like Rose being more battle ready than Ethan was. but her ability, like you're going to be using abilities in combat. I feel like it's where it's going with her. Like because they make it very like clear, like, hey, she is enhanced. She has stuff going on with her. She's very powerful. What's that going to mean in the sequel? And they're setting her up as like as in not a position of power. She's being lorded over by Chris and Chris's men. And you know, like, what's that relationship like? Is she close to Chris? Probably not. And if not, then like I pointed out before, we're gonna have kind of a big boss slash, you know, Solid Snake dynamic where it's like, you know, a confrontational relationship at the very least, and they're trying to kill each other at other times.
That's a very interesting idea. I would love to see something like that. There's a lot of different ways they could go with this, and I am definitely in for the ride to see what they do next. I do have to say, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of thoughts about the epilogue other than I didn't like it, and I don't actually want to have to care about Rose anymore. And I hate to say that. Everything you said would be really cool to see. I just, as kind of baseline, I don't want to see Rose be the next protagonist. I don't care. I want to be done with the Mia, Ethan, and Rose stuff. I kind of hope I want to go back to like Jill or Claire, or you know, the characters who have stories that need to be finished, like even Chris. You know, and hopefully if Rose is the next protagonist, Chris would be a part of that. But I don't, the epilogue doesn't make me more excited for the next game than it already did. And I'm not exactly thrilled about seeing Rose again, but whatever comes out, and if Rose is front and center for it, I will be there and I will play it.
Well, so the way I feel about it is Rose is a new character. She was a baby, didn't exist in 7, was a baby all of 8. And they committed to a time jump, at least at the end of this game.
Yeah,
and it felt very much like the next game is going to be Rose centric. And the way I feel about it is I don't think that they're going to be focusing on Ethan and Mia in this one. I think it's going to be focused on the mold stuff or whatever else, like whatever was left hanging, whatever Easter eggs we missed that are hinting at the next game. Like I think that she's just going to become a Resident Evil character, you know, like
probably.
I don't think that she's going to feel the same as Ethan did. And I think that that was just like a statement that we actually like, that was going to be the case when we saw her face, you know, like that they were like, this is going to be a character. She has her own motivations. She's got a bit of an attitude, as you can tell, like in that scene. And I'm more like, I don't care to see any more of the Ethan Mia saga, but I am happy to get back into the, like, you know, the ridiculous, like the ridiculous Resident Evil characters. And I think they're gearing her up to be one. And if, like, I think you can have her and still revisit the old things, like, you know, I bring Jill and Claire and Leon and all that stuff back. But I do think we're at a point where the Resident Evil series is trying to evolve to the next thing. And I think they're correctly assessing the situation as, look, we can continue to explore our lore and stuff, but we do need to kind of take a step backwards and show a little bit more restraint in how we do that. I mean, that also requires some evolution because as they tried to do their rounds in 5 and 6 and like kind of stick to what was familiar, and they were kind of following along the path that they had set, I think they lost their way a little bit. And you know, I think I even though I have a lot of problems with this game, the things that worked, I feel like they can, like, it took a lot of talent and creativity to make those things work. And I think that if they're focused on those things in the next game, that it could be great.
Sure. Yeah. I agree with you in a sense. It does need to evolve, and they seem to be on the way there, but I just don't know if Rose is the way to go about it.
Well, she's nobody now is how I look at it.
Sure, you're right. It is a bit of a clean slate. It's a good connection to the past while being a new slate. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, like I said, I'm in for the ride. But I hope it's not going to go the way that I think it's going to.
Yeah, if it's more Ethan and Mia stuff, I'll be with you and be disappointed in the next game. But yeah, I think it definitely should just be a new story with Roses at the front and center. You know, she's been set up, and now we get to see what she's doing.
Right.
Well, let me ask, how many more times are we going to have in a first person game a character get all up in your face, breathing down your throat, monologuing? Do we really need this anymore?
Oh, I love this. I think it's good, and I think if you're going to have a first-person game, this is one of the good storytelling techniques that they can use. I know what parts of the game you're talking about where this happened. I thought they were very compelling. I like it. I would want to see more of this. If the next Resident Evil retains a first-person perspective, I want to see more of this.
It's not the first person. Well, I guess the first person kind of contributes to it, but it just seems it's like a trick that's used in like all of the first person games, and for me, it doesn't work. It's very like, hey, we're like putting this person inches from your face, and they're just talking at you. It doesn't feel very engaging to me. But that's me. We can have different opinions on that one.
Sure, I think we do. Yeah. I want to ask you, this game really gives you more agency about which weapons you use, and we get a few, and there's a few that you can even skip that you don't have to get. What was your favorite weapon to use in this game?
The Magnum. Beast of a weapon. Like it's a good thing that they did not give you all that many shots for it, because that thing was incredible against everyone.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to use. It felt powerful. Like, so here's how I think the Resident Evil gun combat should evolve. I think you can retain the amount of damage that they're doing to these things, but I think what I would like to see from Resident Evil guns going forward is all of them feeling powerful, even if they're not doing that much damage to the thing you're fighting. Because I think that's where a lot of, like, you have that, like, how satisfying is this versus how risky is the situation. I think you can find a happier balance between the two. And I think the Magnum in particular, like, you're like just wailing on some stuff, and like even if you're not killing them, you're stunning them for a second, And I think that like stun in the combat is a good way to make your combat feel a lot less like bullet spongy and a lot more like satisfying, And I just loved everything about the Magnum. It was just a great reward for being thorough in that game.
Oh yeah, Magnum. I mean, that's a Resident Evil trope, right? Is that the Magnum is always kind of one of the more powerful guns that you're going to get, and it gives you a great enemy that you. It's your second. It's your second encounter with like the wolf creature, and before that you had to get the grenade launcher to be able to do any significant damage to it. But you see that enemy again once you pick up the Magnum, and then you could just two-shot it. I think I needed 2 shots for it, but that felt so good to be able to do that.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that whole Chris thing where it's like you've come so far. This is what you can do now, and it felt awesome. Yeah, and I also like how they kind of like tied the Magnum in this game back around into the lore. It fires silver bullets, which hurts the Lycans. Great realization.
Yeah, for sure. I've in Resident Evil games, I'm always a shotgun boy. I think a lot of people are. That was my main weapon. I actually loved how the handgun remained useful the entire game. Like I never felt in most Resident Evil games, you get to a point where it's like, I no longer need the handgun. I put it up. I'm just using my more powerful weapons now. I use the handgun to the second handgun. You get the upgraded one. I put that to good use, like pretty much throughout the entire game. But once I got the more powerful shotgun, I think you find it in one of the houses after the Donna house. I upgraded that one all the way. I was just headshotting enemies left and right with that shotgun, and that was my favorite weapon. The sniper rifle, I liked the power of it, but it was a little unwieldy and was only good in like certain situations. So I was leaning heavily on my shotgun.
Yeah, I think in the next game I'd like to see them go more hunting rifle and less sniper rifle, because there's really not that many long range encounters or situations where you would. I think having a strong medium range gun with like limited shots is like a good direction for the rifle going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, anyways, I think that does it for Resident Evil Village. I mean, like, how do you feel? Like now that we have gotten past the hype phase and the playing phase, and now we're like stewing on this thing?
Yeah, overall I liked it. I'm happy with what they did. I can't say it's an all timer. I can't say it's a dandy AF. There's too many mistakes, too many letdowns in it. But overall, I think it was good. It was a good baseline for what they can do in the future. So I mean, I'm happy with it. I don't regret buying it. I'm glad I played it. I'm sure I'll play it again in the future sometime once some distance grows there. And I liked that. I was happy with it.
Yeah. I think I fell in the camp that like the things it did great, I really loved. It was an all timer in terms of nailing the really good things. The village, Lady Dimitrescu in her castle, everything with the the baby in Donna's basement. But there are some like lessons, I think, like franchise lessons that they're still kind of like trying to work out with, bullet spongy enemies and some like, frustrate, basically how they scale up difficulty for their enemies, I think is something that they've really got to think about. And if they're going to continue to make these big boss fights in first person, they need to take spatial awareness for the player into account more. Because I really do think that like up until like Moreau, I would have called this an all-timer. I was like, man, I can't think of one I enjoy as much. Like Resident Evil 4 is my favorite Resident Evil, and this is giving it for a run for its money. That feeling dissipated very strongly over the course of those last several sections. It got further away from the dangerous exploration and fell more into the frustrating claustrophobic combat, and it didn't work for me.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, it's there. That is our deep dive into Resident Evil 8. I'm so glad that we were able to sit down and talk about this because I know both of us had a lot to say, and I appreciate you holding your vital essences to yourself until we got down and was able to record this.
Yeah, it was a struggle. I had a lot to say whenever I wrapped it up, and I was good. I mostly kept it to myself, but here we are. We got it out. I'm glad to be past it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Will, we're starting something. We have done 2 specials in like the last 4 episodes now, but we're going to do not 1, but 4 more specials over the course of our next few episodes.
All in a row, and we hope that you'll join us on this journey here. Look, you've all heard of White Boy Summer, right? Oh, scratch that out. We're not doing that. We've got something even better. So scratch it out. We are doing Game Pass Summer. That's right. I think everyone listening to this probably knows about the Xbox Game Pass, where for, was it $10.99 per month, you get access to a lot of different games, and not just Microsoft games, not just Xbox games, but a lot of publishers, including Bethesda, which was recently bought by Microsoft, and is now part of the Xbox brand. When that happened, they added a lot of those Bethesda games, or Bethesda published games, into Game Pass, and we were thinking, we're both paying for this. There's a lot of great games on there, but we don't have a lot of time, with all the extra stuff, personal stuff that we do, and then our exhortation. So we thought that our podcast was a great opportunity to dive into Game Pass and see what is on offer. So starting with the next episode, we're going to be doing a couple of exhortations each based on games in Game Pass that we want to play, ones we want to try out. I'm going first, and my exhortation for the first Game Pass Summer exhortation for you, Jordan, is going to be Dishonored, specifically Dishonored 1.
Hey, okay.
Have you played this before?
I have, yes. Would you like me to tell you my experience with it? Or would you like me to save it?
Give me the very quick rundown about what the game is.
It is a first-person stealth action game that takes place in a, I guess, whale punk London-ish area. I will not tip my hand too much, but I will have a lot to say about this game.
Okay, great. I have not played this game. I love the aesthetics. I love the studio that comes from. This is Arcane, which also did Prey 2017, which is a all-time favorite game for me. I know it's a part of that immersive sim genre, like System Shock or BioShock or Prey, like I said. I know I'm going to love this game. I just need to sit down and play it. So join us next episode for a dive into Dishonored, and I cannot wait to try this one out.
Yeah, and just as like a declaration, real quick, we're not like sponsored by Microsoft or anything. We're both a couple of cheap boys who like playing good video games for little cost, and Games Pass is like the best value on PC right now, which is why we're kind of touting this right now. There's so many good games on there, and we're gonna just be hitting some ones that like we think that everyone should, or at least that we want to play and think everyone else should be checking out as well for such a cheap service.
Hey, we're open to being sponsored. Microsoft, have your people call our people. Let's get something going.
Yeah, please give us your money. We need it. Well,
Yeah.
how about some back matter? Let's close this out and talk about what's been going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So for me, I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering lately. They just brought Jumpstart back to Arena. And may I tell you, I know I sent you a text saying I was going to work on the outline for this episode, but I did just sit and play Jumpstart all this morning, having a ton of fun with it. I had a really cool, white weenie / blue mill deck that I went 7-0 with this morning before retiring it. And it's just, Jumpstart is so much fun. And it's weird for me to say as a entrenched Magic player that Jumpstart is like my favorite way to play Magic, but I think it might actually just be my favorite way to play Magic. So probably for this next period until we do our next episode, it's mostly going to be just Jumpstart and Dishonored. But how about you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's kind of woke of you to for Jumpstart to be your favorite way to engage with Magic. You're not like all those degenerate Commander players.
Yeah, for sure. Jumpstart just gives me everything I want in Magic.
Okay, so for me, I've been game hopping a lot lately, mostly just because wrapping up Resident Evil was an experience for me, and I'm just kind of looking for the next the next thing. So right now, I'm tying up Mass Effect 2. At which point I'm actually like pretty close to the end now. The only reason why I haven't finished it is because I just have been trying to save myself. It's, in my opinion, the greatest like Western RPG of all time. And just going through that thing's just always a treat. But other than that, we're watching through Adventure Time again with the kids, which is another all-time favorite. And because they've been doing some Distant Lands, they've been doing the Distant Lands specials, which are like these hour-long specials that are kind of like showing you what's going on outside of the series since it ended.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really rewarding as a fan because while there is some fan service in these episodes, they're mostly just kind of like contextualizing things that fans want to see more of. It's been really good.
That sounds like a real treat for those who are super invested in that universe.
It is, and they have been. They have all the episodes. They've done 3 episodes so far. They have one more that we know that they're going to do, and so far, each one has been better than the last. They're really strong. And other than that, yeah, I'm just I am getting ready for this Games Pass summer thing because it was tough narrowing down the games I wanted to choose for this, but once I did, I was like, I mean, this is good. I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about, and that's gonna be my next 4 weeks really.
Great. I am super excited about it. But with that said, let's wrap this episode up.
Yeah, close us out.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of Disc Dandies. We really do appreciate it. Every time you come in and join us for this. You can follow Jordan on Twitter at Action Pancake. I'm at Agro Rhetoric on Twitter. And we would love it if you would follow along with our exhortations and stay up to date on all the latest Disc Dandies excitement at Disc Dandies Pod. Join the YouTube channel. All of our episodes are on there. Comment, tell us what you thought, tweet at us. We want to hear what you have to say. It means a lot to us. And join us here next episode for another spin with the Disc Dandies.
Bye.
Later.